Sometimes when I'm making YouTube videos, I really struggle with the content, and it's more with how to put the story together to where it makes sense to you as I'm telling it. And this is one of those videos that I've struggled with for a couple of weeks now to get this part 2 out. I'll link part 1 above, of this install of a diesel parking heater in my step van. So why was this video so difficult for me to put together? Well, I would say there's 2 reasons for that. First, when I'm working with another individual on a project, sometimes I feel that it is almost rude or disrespectful to the person I'm working with if I'm whipping out a camera in the middle of problem solving or working through something. It seems impersonal to want to document that in the moment. So that's what happened as part of this video. I just didn't capture very much video. Part number 2 was when I was problem solving and trying to come up with solutions, the last thing on my mind was to whip out the camera and document what was going on. So for that, I apologize, and I'll try to make this video make sense. We had a slight delay because Badge was going to be running into town, running some errands, and he was going to pick up a part that we needed to finish the install, and that is a T-connector. Badge made a trip into town and got a T-connector here for my fuel line to go off to the gas heater. We got a scrap piece of hose we're going to be using.
Seven decided he wants to put it in the fuel line, the main fuel line going down the truck, which is plenty. This thing will run for months off the main fuel tank. So what we had to do is you got to cut the 1/2-inch line, and we'll take probably that much out of it, and then we have to hook the heater to here. So we're going to do that it's on the left side. So this is all we got to do. We got it in, we got it all, the exhaust intake on, the blower exhaust is on, 7 wired into the fuse panel. So everything's to go, we just got to put the fuel line on it. So now the problem with this is you got to remember this is fuel line, so you got to have fuel line. You just can't put any old rubber on it. It's got to be fuel line. And we use brass because it seals better than steel. So yeah, we got this, and you got to remember when we're going to overlap it on the line. So we'll cut the line and we'll take out and leave it about 1 inch in or 2 inches in the rubber, and then put hose clamps on it, and it'll be just fine. And you got to remember, when you cut the line, don't start the truck. You got to put the line back on, get it all, and fill it up with fuel. So there's a primer pump on the side. It's going to take a while, but you get the prime up, and then it'll take right off. So I think it's going to be a good deal.
Badge has been tremendously helpful in a number of installs, and you've seen him in several of my videos. The man is just amazing and a good friend of mine. I genuinely appreciate his help, his skill, and his mentoring ability in helping me get things done in the step van, in this instance, the diesel heater. Thank you, Badge. And I recommend you guys check out his channel. There's tons and tons of informational videos on there, all sorts of things just like the diesel heater, and you can learn a lot from his channel. Description below will have a link over to his channel. Check it out. So Badge crawled underneath the step van and he installed the T-connector. Everything went fabulous, no problems at all there. So shortly after that, Badge said it was time for testing. I put the fuse in the fuse box, and so we did the testing, and I pushed the power button and the unit turned on. Let me show you what that looks like. Here's the unit as it's mounted here on the wall, and this center button over here is how you turn it on. So basically you'll hold this down for a 1/2 second, and you'll see this thing will switch and it'll start blinking and saying it's turning on. Everything's looking good. You'll see a little icon here of a whirling, spinning fan. That's a great sign. You can see over here another little symbol that indicates a little internal, I think, engine thing is going. And then after a second or so, you'll start seeing another icon that'll pop up here on the left-hand side, which is the pump, which is pumping diesel fuel from the tank through the new T-connector and up into the diesel unit. Down here it shows air intake coming in through the bottom and exiting through the bottom. So all of these icons indicate great things. So the first time we tested this, everything looked exactly like what you're seeing on the screen, and we got hot air, everything warmed up, it looked great. So Badge told me, turn it off. So I looked at how to turn it off, and I clicked the off button, and the unit was still running. I'm like, well, this is going to take a while. I don't know what's going on. So I went over and I pulled the fuse out of the fuse box to cut power to the unit. What I didn't know at the time, and I didn't learn until probably 5 or 6 days later, is that the diesel parking heaters like I installed are very peculiar and require a shutdown sequence. And the shutdown sequence is basically you hold that power button for about 5 or 6 seconds, and then you'll see the display showing off, and then it goes through the shutdown sequence. So the fan will ramp up to maximum speed, and it'll start circulating fuel through the system to sort of purge everything, and then it turns off the heater inside, and then it starts powering everything down. There is one weak point in these diesel heater models, and that is that little circuit board is mounted right on top of the heater, on top of the fins, and if you don't go through this shutdown sequence, it will basically fry and melt that circuit board. Well, that's basically what happened when I pulled the fuse out of the fuse box. It did not go through that shutdown sequence, and it roasted the circuit board immediately, and it never turned on again after that. So basically I killed the diesel heater. So over the next 4 or 5 days, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't understand that the circuit board had been fried. So we went through numerous and numerous types of experiments to try to figure out what was going on. Badge disconnected things, we reconnected things, we tested the pump separately, ran separate power supplies there. We ran separate leads for voltage into the unit to make sure that it had enough voltage, that the voltage was stable. We tried 2 different battery banks. We tried changing the airflow. We changed the exhaust position. We started playing with the angle of the fuel pump. We started looking at the fuel lines. We looked at lots of different things. And at the same time, we also needed to start up the diesel step van with the Cummins engine, because I had spliced into the fuel line. We needed to prime the fuel line and get the fuel back from the tank back up to the engine because there was an air gap there. That turned out to be quite a bit more difficult than we expected. I thought I was going to burn up my starter motor, and probably tried for 10-12 minutes to start it, and tried to do 20-second cycles of running the starter and letting it cool off, and running the starter and letting it cool off. I really thought I was going to fry the starter and drain my batteries, but I have really robust batteries for my starter, and Badge just kept telling me, keep going, keep going, keep going, and it sounded like it wanted to start, but it just wouldn't quite start. We actually had to table it that day, and the next morning, after about 15-20 minutes of trying to get it started, finally I got it started, smoked out half of the camper nearby with the diesel fumes coming off of the engine as it was trying to get the diesel fuel back in there. So I apologize to all of my neighbors during that experience. Thank you so much for being patient with me trying to get my step van started and the fuel back up into the engine. I guess that's just the nature of diesels and the complications you have when you slice into a fuel line. I'm trying to explain this story to where it makes sense, and I apologize that this has become a long, drawn-out thing. Ultimately, after 4 or 5 days, I was not able to get the diesel heater to go. Schoolie-palooza was over. Badge was leaving, and so I left and decided to just keep troubleshooting it. It was about then that I figured out that the circuit board was most likely fried, and I had installed everything in there. I had the dilemma of what to do at that point. So I decided, because I was stressed at the time, to do the easy solution for me, and perhaps this is not the best financial decision, but I bought a second diesel heater unit. So I had a second unit shipped to me, and I took that unit and just took the core heater itself and installed that with all the existing components, plugged it in, got everything going, pushed the power button, and As you saw right there just a couple of minutes ago, it started right up. It ran fantastic, and it's been running fine since, and I've had many toasty evenings and mornings using the diesel heater since. It's been really fabulous. Anyway, that's the story. That's what's going on with the diesel heater. It is running now. It is absolutely fabulous. I have it on its lowest setting, and it totally heats up the step fan far, far better than my Olympian Wave heater, which is a radiant propane heater that I've been using for the last couple of years. So love the new heater. That's all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Savor the moment, and I'll see you in a future episode.